Today we're going to be making this amazing black garlic ravioli. Black garlic has a really unique flavor. It's a wonderful combination of umami and sweetness, and it goes great in this ravioli. It's a flavor profile I think you'll find impossible not to love. And don't worry, we won't have to strain too much making this pasta. Let's just start out here with 2 cups of all-purpose flour. We'll sprinkle in about half a teaspoon of salt, and then we'll just make a small well in the center. You don't really have to, but it's traditional. And then we'll add 3 large eggs. A lot of people like starting to mix with a fork so your hands don't get quite so sticky, but you're going to get kind of sticky either way. It's likely we're going to need a little bit of supplemental water here, but the easiest way is just to start mixing and see where you wind up. I have seen some recipes that attempt to eliminate all the variables, having you weigh the flour and carefully measure the exact volume of your eggs and all that sort of stuff, but that still doesn't take into account altitude or the relative humidity of your flour, so I still think you're better off just getting mixing and seeing how dry it is. Once our fork has done as excellent of a job as it can, it's time to switch to our hands. If you have a stand mixer or food processor, those work great for this. I just wanted to show this is easy to make without any special tools at all. It's pretty much always going to seem like you're going to need extra water at first, but keep going, you'll be surprised how much moisture are in those eggs. But once we get to a point where the dough ball is forming, but it's not picking up all that flour, we can go ahead and add water 1 tablespoon at a time. Work that in a little before you add any more. I find it's usually just a very small amount of liquid required to take it from too dry to perfect. Too often I've thought it was so dry I'd go ahead and add 2 tablespoons of water only to discover that now it's too wet and I have to add more flour to balance things out, so don't do that. Once our dough ball is able to pick up all the flour, we don't need to knead too much. I'd say 2 or 3 minutes should be just fine. We can see this dough ball is still pretty rough, not smooth at all. I wouldn't want to try to roll this out right now, but that's okay because it's going to soften up a lot as it hydrates and the gluten develops during the resting period. The longer it rests, the more gluten develops. So if you're finding certain dough recipes a little too kneady, maybe what you'd need is less kneading and more resting. That sounds like a good solution. For this dough, I'd recommend letting it rest at least 20 to 30 minutes. Which is plenty of time to make our black garlic filling. Black garlic has such a unique flavor and texture, I don't really know how best to describe it other than sort of like a date that had a grandmother that was garlic. I'm going to use a whole head of black garlic here, along with half a cup of Parmesan cheese and about a pound of full-fat ricotta cheese. To that, we're going to crack in some fresh pepper to taste. This is actually tricolor pepper. I really like that kind. And about half a teaspoon of salt or so, just to balance out the sweetness of that black garlic. And you could totally make this mix by hand. The black garlic is really easy to crush with the back of a spoon. But I'm just going to give that a quick spin in my food processor. Hopefully that doesn't generate too many cutting remarks. We can blend this fairly smooth or leave it a little chunky. Either way is great. But once we're happy with our cheese situation, we can just set this aside and start rolling out our pasta dough. Now, I know different people have different preferences for the moisture level on their pasta dough, but for me, it's perfect when I can unwrap it and it just sticks slightly to the plastic. If it sticks to the plastic a lot, it's too wet. And if it was, I would definitely roll out with flour, but because it's perfect, I'm going to use just a lightly oiled board here. We'll just give it a quick knead to check on the texture, and you can really see that after that resting period, this dough is totally different. Look how smooth and soft it is now. So if you think you need to be getting a great workout kneading your dough to develop all that gluten, you really don't. Sometimes it just takes patience. As far as rolling this out, I like to cut it down into at least 4 pieces. Be sure and cover the unused pieces in plastic so it doesn't dry out. And we basically just want to roll this pasta dough as thin as we can get it. Especially because we're making ravioli, the final thickness is going to be double what we wind up rolling to, so definitely keep that in mind. Once we can almost see through our dough, we want to lay on about 1 ounce scoops of our black garlic ricotta cheese mixture. Then we simply want to fold up the other half of the dough and get these sealed up. One of the perks of using an oiled board versus a floured board is that these will not have that dry surface on them, so they'll be super easy to seal by hand. Just be sure and press around the cheese mixture. We want to get out all of those little air bubbles to avoid any potential explosions when we boil them. Now we simply trim off the excess pasta dough into whatever shape we would like. I'm going to go for little squares here and then just off to our pot of salted boiling water. where we'll cook these for 2 or 3 minutes depending on how big we made them. Yes, fresh pasta really doesn't have to cook for very long at all. I like to make nice giant raviolis like this, especially when I'm making it by hand, because that means I have to make less of them. So I consider 4 or 6 raviolis to be a full serving in this case. Because it's so fast, I like to cook one serving at a time and just fish them out with a little spider like this, as we are ready to serve our beautiful black garlic ravioli. I'm going to pair that with some of my favorite simple homemade marinara sauce. I'm going to put a link to a video that has that recipe down in the description, as well as my video on how to make black garlic. But if you'd like to save yourself about a month and also support the channel, I'm going to put an Amazon link down in the description where you can just buy some black garlic. A little bit of fresh grated mozzarella on top here, and we are ready to eat. I really hope you've enjoyed today's episode of Passion for Food. If you have, give me a thumbs up below and don't forget to subscribe and hit that little bell so you don't miss our future videos. And check out one of our other awesome recipes on the screen now. This has been Graham with a passion for food. Far too often I've added 2 tablespoons of water only to discover, whoops, now it's too wet and I'm adding flour to try and balance things that... Cut!